So maybe if you're talking to some milquetoast liberal who lives in Northeast D.C. or Northwest D.C. in a $2 million house,
Shermichael,
then maybe they're
live
saying,
in Virginia,
oh, it's great.
and I live in
maybe
Washington, D.C.
But let me tell you something. There are
You
a
live
lot
in
of people
Virginia,
who live in the
and I
poor
live in
areas who
Washington,
do
D.C.
not see it the way that Lulu just described. And again, I'm not saying, Aaron, that this is a long-term fix. I acknowledge the fact that this is only temporary. You do got to increase funding. You do have to have more policing. But hell, that's pretty hypocritical coming from the other side who demonized the hell out of police for 4 years.
That's CNN's Shermichael Singleton admitting what Democrats refuse to say. Trump's crackdown in DC is working, crime is falling, communities are safer, and the media hates it because it proves Trump can fix what they let collapse. Welcome to Nerk News, I'm Nerkish, and it looks like CNN may have slipped up and accidentally told the truth, because even their liberal guests are starting to reluctantly admit Trump's policies are working, which is why they're choosing to attack the strategy instead of acknowledging the failures of Democratic leadership. Here's CNN trying to desperately spin this, only for Singleton to expose how weak their objections really sound.
I mean, if you look at this, this is punishment and not policy. Policy for crime would be like, I'm going to give you more money. I'm going to surge the police. I'm going to do things to help you tackle crime. This is aimed squarely at states and governors he doesn't like. I read something in the FT the other day which said if this was happening in any other country, they would paint this as, you know, basically a president targeting opposition members in cities that he doesn't control. I mean, it just isn't American. This isn't the way we do things here.
Yeah, sure, Mike, I think Lulu does have a fair point here, right? You would say if this were in another country, targeting opposition, right? Targeting his opposition leaders, opposition locations, certainly if Putin were doing it. Because the reality of it is that if this were really about crime, why is Trump not doing it in any Republican-led cities or states?
Look, I would do it wherever the crime is concentrated. It's objectively true that there are pockets of the city of Chicago that do have high concentrations of crime. We can't deny that. Look, is this a long-term strategy? Absolutely not. But it is a temporary fix. The president using the bully pulpit to put a spotlight on crime in Chicago, I think makes sense. We're discussing it. The mayor of D.C. just signed an act today allowing local police to work indefinitely with federal law enforcement because what they have seen is a decrease to a number of 0 in terms of murders in the city of D.C. Why would that not be a good thing? In Labor Day, just passed, for example, 58 people were shot in Chicago. 8 of those people killed. The youngest, who is now in critical condition, is a teenager. So, Aaron, to me, you may not necessarily like what the president is doing, but how in the world could any sane person not agree that trying to make safer communities for people who live in some of those higher concentrated areas of crime is not something that should be a bipartisan effort?
You know, Democrats keep proving they don't give a crap about safety. Singleton laid out the sad reality of crime and liberal incompetence in a lot of these areas. I mean, under Trump, DC went 13 straight days without a homicide. Murders are down 57%, carjackings are down 67%, and robberies are down 40%. The truth is, Democrats let their cities rot with defund the police chaos, soft on crime policies, and corruption. Now they're trying to spin Trump's crackdown as politically motivated because he's targeting liberal strongholds with spineless leaders. But those cities became crime-ridden dumps under Democrat rule. One of the federal government's core jobs is to ensure the safety of its citizens, and if local leaders won't do it, Trump will. Establishment media hacks like this woman on CNN are panicking because they know that these fixes will expose how useless her party has been all along.
Muriel Bowser, she's just issued an executive order that requires coordination with federal law enforcement to the maximum extent allowable by law, in the words of her order, without an expiration date. And she did just days ago admit that Trump's crackdown in D.C. was reducing crime. So what does it make? What does it mean that she has essentially, it sounds like, said, well, they can stay as long as they want and work with them?
I think it means that she's probably not going to be reelected as mayor of D.C. because if the polling here shows that about 80% of D.C. residents think that this is an absolute overreach, of course nobody likes crime. Of course murders are bad. But this is about something much deeper. How do you do this? Whose role is it to tackle it? And who has autonomy?
So, Shermichael, what do you make of the
can I,
mayor?
can
Yeah,
I,
go ahead.
can I push
Yeah.
back a little bit? I mean,
Yep.
what people, who's saying this? You know, 2 weeks ago, I was on air on Laura Coates' show, and we aired about a 4 or 5 minute package of one of our reporters talking to residents in D.C., for example, who live in some of those very dangerous areas. Mixed race people, young and old, older people saying, you know, at my age, I have to go home before sundown because it is too dangerous.
I believe in a democracy, people who live in a city should have a say in what happens there.
I
Call me
agree, but
crazy.
I agree. I'm also a strategist. I've worked in a lot of polls, and I know focus group, size,
80%.
education, ethnicity, all of that stuff matters, Lulu. It's easy to come up with a poll and say, well, this demonstrates what most people believe. You know that as well as I do. But people also deserve to live in safe communities, and having 60, 50, 40 people killed in the
100%.
city every other weekend just seems nonsensical to me.
I mean, the will of the people has always been clear. Voters want safe streets. Democrats push no bail laws, sanctuary city policies, and open borders. None of that came from the people. Crime is now at the lowest level since 1969. These are historic results. So obviously, liberals and their puppets in establishment media are desperate to paint it as authoritarian because they can't admit Trump's success. The fact is, Trump created another perfect 80-20 issue for his opponents, and they took the bait. Most Americans want safety. Only activists and radicals want chaos. That's why the media is panicking. Trump is proving them wrong in real time. But let me know what you think. Should Trump keep sending federal resources into crime-ridden blue cities until they're cleaned up? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That stuff really does help us out. Until then, this has been Nerk News. Thanks for watching. Bye.